Okay, this question is from Paul via Twitter, and Paul wants to know, has your sound and style evolved from the last album? And if so, what was the inspiration behind this change? I think the simple answer for that is probably that yes, it has changed. I don't think it's a completely drastic overhaul, but it's significantly different that you would have to hear the music for yourself to see whether or not you liked it. I always try to I think this might answer the second part of your question. I always try to create music that I think sort of sounds like my sound or has, signature elements of the other music I've released, but I always try to do something kind of different. So I guess that's the inspiration behind the change, that I'm always trying to try out new things and not pigeonhole myself into any one sort of style. Here's one that comes from Mike on Twitter, and Mike wants to know, who are your major musical influences, and of these, who most influenced your sound? I think as with the last question, this is one of those questions where my favorite artists are changing periodically. Even a couple times a year I'll have, a group of favorite artists that I currently really like. There's the core group of bands and stuff that have influenced me on everything, I would say Beatles and Cream, Hendrix in terms of production and engineering more so than guitar playing, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Soul Coughing was a big influence on me. As far as during the production of this record that's coming out, it's kind of hard to say since it's been in production, not in production, but I started writing and recording demos for it back in 2007. So I've went through many cycles of changing who my favorite artists of the time were. But while we were recording this record, I listened to a lot of Talking Heads, actually, which is kind of strange because I don't think that a lot of the sounds on the record remind me of Talking Heads. And I've listened to Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band quite a bit, Pearl Jam. I think I was going for trying to make a record like Neil Young's Harvest, which, again, I don't necessarily think that to a lot of people it will sound like that, but I tried to sort of capture the same emotion that record conveyed to me when I heard it the first time. This question comes from Matt, who wants to know, a lot of your gear has changed since your last record. How has that affected your sound? One thing I definitely used on this album that I have not used before is the Electro-Harmonix, the Big Muff, which is a very famous, well-known pedal. Gives you a nice crunchy, fuzzy distortion sound. So I used that on a lot of lead parts on this record. I also used a Fender Stratocaster with EMG SA pickups, which is not something I have used before, but I used it on the songs that use a solid body guitar, and it sounds pretty good. I used my Gretsch hollow body on most of the songs for electric, and I also played my Dobro as a backing track on a lot of songs to give it more of a folksy acoustic vibe. Okay, this next question is from David, and it asks, what brand is your blue guitar? And that's actually kind of an interesting question because a lot of people think it's a Fender Stratocaster, which it is obviously modeled after, but it is a Samick, which is a Korean company. From my understanding, they make a lot of piano stuff, and actually for a while, I don't know if they do anymore as much, but they made a lot of individual parts for Gibson and Fender guitars. I found that guitar in 2003, and I checked, using the internet, I checked the serial number, and apparently it's from 1992. I can't really validate any information about the guitar because I don't really have any information about it. I just know that I like playing it, and it looks kind of cool. And I knew when I got it, I liked the color of blue it was. Okay, this question comes from Laura via Facebook. Laura wants to know, out of all the songs you have written, which has been the most fun, meant the most to you, and favorite to write and create? She also wants to know why. Okay, most fun song. Probably Bubble King, but I also enjoyed a lot of the weird effects and panning and stuff I did on the track Wasteland. The song that meant the most to me would probably be either Allusions to a God or Home. Both of those have very personal lyrics. Even though all my lyrics are pretty, introspective and personal, those ones specifically I like a lot. And my favorite song to write and create. That's a tough one. I have particularly fond memories of recording Swan Song with Brandon Martinozzi. The whole junk solo thing that we did in the middle specifically was a lot of fun. We just brought in like an empty water jug and some pipes and some weird stuff and banged on it. And it ended up sounding kind of cool. It's never really been reproduced live. I just do a guitar solo during that part. So it also holds a place in my heart as being a very unique one-time experience since we've never done it otherwise. This question comes from Jeremy, who wants to know, what was the first cover song you played? I'm not sure if you mean the first cover that was played live or the first cover that was recorded, because I know I recorded a bunch of covers for those Blanket Statement EPs. But either way, it's the same answer. It was the cover of Cream's Badge off their album Goodbye, which was, it showed up on Illusions to a God, and also we played it at the first gig. The odd thing about that song, about that cover, is I don't know that I've ever been happy with it. I don't think it fits with Illusions to a God very well, and I don't really necessarily like the way our cover turned out. I've had people tell me that they thought it was the best song on that album. I've had people tell me it doesn't fit in and they hate it. So it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. I know Brandon wanted to do a cover when we were recording that album, and I had been listening to a lot of Cream. They're one of my favorite bands at that time. I really liked playing that guitar part that's in Badge. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't have put it on the album. I probably would have just left it as a B-side or an unreleased track or something, you know. This question comes from Tyler via Facebook. Tyler wants to know, if you had to murder anyone Patrick Bateman style, that's the guy from American Psycho for those of you who haven't seen the film, if you had to murder anyone Patrick Bateman style, what song of yours would be playing in the background? And that's kind of a dark question, but I guess I'll bite. I'm going to say, Even the Cameraman is an Actor. This question comes from Dwayne. Dwayne asks, if you made a third Blanket Statement EP, what songs would you record for it? There are a bunch actually that I tried to record in the past that didn't come out so well, so I would definitely try and probably get some of those on the third Blanket Statement. One of them was David Bowie's Always Crashing in the Same Car from his album Low. I'm a big fan of that song. I've often wondered what it would be like to do an acoustic take on Peter Gabriel's Family Snapshot. And one that might seem a little bit weird, is CKY's 96 Quite Bitter Beings. I always thought that would kind of be interesting as an acoustic song, and I'd still like to try that someday. This question comes from Rick, who asks, in the past, you have mentioned that this record will be a concept album. If that's still the case, what is the concept of the record? To answer that question, yes, the record is still a concept record. If I explain the concept of the record now at this point, I don't know what would encourage you to still listen to it. So all I'll say is the record is a narrative and it tells a story. Some of the lyrics are sung from one person's point of view. Some of the lyrics are sung from another person's point of view. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of crazy things people come up with, and what I was trying to say on this record.